Today I'm going to talk about how to do a chevron pattern on a wall. As you can see, I've already gotten started here on this accent wall. This wall you can see is a little bit lighter gray than this darker wall. And then we have the light gray again here. And then I'm going to be doing a white chevron. So I'm going to kind of walk you through the process up to this point. Well, I already have it part way done. So the first step that you're going to do is you're going to be measuring, obviously. So you want to measure out your wall space. So I did the measurements here. You can see I had a 92-inch high wall by 136.5 inches. This is approximate measurements. I used line grid paper. For me, this was a lot easier to actually measure this out. And just because some people may not know how many lines they want to do. So you can see I already have the wall painted this gray color and I want to put in white chevron. I chose three. I want three white chevron lines, and I wanted to have 1, 2, 3 peaks as well. So you can see that I had 3 peaks and then 1, 2 down here. So what that means is I have 3 peaks and 3 lines. And this is important when we're trying to determine how far apart to space our lines when we're trying to measure out the chevron pattern. I did this to scale, so every 2 squares is 10 inches. And again, the reason I did that is because if you're not sure how many chevron lines or how many chevron peaks you want, you could do a couple of these and kind of get an idea of what it would look like. So obviously, if you chose more peaks, you would have more of a straight up and down chevron. And then if you chose more actual lines, they would actually be much closer together here and they wouldn't be as thick. So this is what I already knew I wanted. I didn't want it to be extreme chevron. I wanted it to be very subtle in terms of how many lines I had. So I already knew what I wanted. To come up with where you would put an actual grid pattern, you're actually going to be using this formula right here. So you can see, I'm trying to get it in focus here. Okay, so to actually calculate, I made this a little bit bigger so you can actually see. To calculate your measurements here of what you would do for a grid. So what we're doing is we're literally drawing a grid on a piece of paper to show us where these chevrons would actually go. The first one that I'm going to show you is my width. So I have, like I said, 136.5 inch wide wall. And then you're going to divide that by 2, multiplied times the number of peaks you want. So again, I wanted 1, 2, 3 peaks. So again, you can do a couple of different designs if you want to try it with 3, try it with 4, try it with 5, however many you're looking to do. And again, that will affect how many zigzags you have here. So I only wanted 3 peaks. So 136.5 divided by 2 times 3, which was 6. So 136.5 divided by 6 is 22.75. So you can see my pattern, like I said, every single one of these squares is going to be 5 inches. So 2 squares is 10. So I went 10, 20, and I kind of estimated 22.75, and I just drew a vertical line. So first I drew my length of the wall, which was the 136.5, and I marked my first one. Now every single one after that is going to be an additional 22.75 inches. So I have 45.5, 68.25, 91 inches, and then 113.75 inches. And then my last line technically would be the end of the wall. I'm gonna do the same thing for my height. So the height of my wall is 92 inches. And I'm gonna divide that the same way. I'm gonna divide by 2, but I'm gonna multiply by the number of chevron lines I want. So again, in my example, I wanted 1, 2, 3. I only wanted 3 chevron lines. So again, this is going to vary, and you could do a couple if you're not sure exactly how you want it to look. So again, 92 divided by 2 times 3. So 92 divided by 6, which is about 15 1/3. So you can see when I'm looking here at my next one, I actually measured out 15 1/3, and then I added 15 1/3 again, 30 2/3, 46 inches, 61 1/3, 76 2/3, and then again, my last point would be basically my 92 inches, or the end of my wall. This is actually my baseboard right here. So I measured from my baseboard to my ceiling. Once I was done the grid, all we're doing is connecting the actual lines. So you can see here, so like here's one of my squares here, and I just did a diagonal line from each one of these. So we have one here. One of my squares is right here. It's hard to see this one right here. This is my one at 61 1/3. You can kind of see that I have it marked here. And then I have a 76. So I'm literally just drawing a straight diagonal line from where my grids intersected. So I have a line here, and then I have a line from here to this one. And I do that for every single one. And obviously I'm gonna go in the zigzag pattern. So I'm not gonna always go from bottom right to top left. I want it in the zigzag. So again, if you wanted the zigzags to start and going down first, you would obviously wanna take your first one, and instead of going up, you would actually start up here and you would come down here. So it'd actually be down first. So all I'm doing is just intersecting all of my grids to create the chevron pattern. This gives me a template then to put on the wall. And that's literally what I did here. So on my wall, you can kind of see I still have some lines. So I'm gonna come over here. Kind of erased some of them, but you can see that I actually literally just did lines. And so I did the exact same pattern that was on here. So my lines across the wall are going to be the 22 3/4. So I measured from the edge of the wall, 22 3/4, and drew a line all the way up and down the wall. So it's hard to see, some of them I've painted over here. And then I added an additional 22 3/4, and I just went to my next one. So here's my next line right here. And I just did this all the way across my wall. When it came to the vertical, the horizontal lines, I decided not to draw the entire line. I didn't do the whole grid all the way across 136 inches. I chose to just measure down the 15 1/3, measure down another 15 1/3, and just kind of, you can see, I did kind of almost just like a crosshair so that I knew where my grids should go. So I kind of just have this little, like this would be my point. This is where they actually intersected right here. And I did the same thing throughout each one of these lines. And the reason I chose to do that, so I had less pencil to erase. I also thought about doing a chalk line. However, chalk lines are very difficult to get off of painted walls. And I just painted this wall the color that we wanted. So I thought it might be easier to get rid of the eraser, to erase the actual pencil marks than to get rid of an actual chalk line. Okay, so once I had these lines on, I literally followed my exact same pattern. So I'm gonna show you, for example, on this bottom corner. So here's my baseboard. So this would be my starting point right here in the corner, which would be my starting point right here. And then I have, again, my first kind of intersection point, which was actually wound up being literally right here on my wall. So that was fun. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna follow the exact same thing. All I did was, instead of drawing a line with a ruler, I used painter's tape. So I didn't actually have to draw the diagonal line. I just used my painter's tape, and I put the painter's tape at the corner here, which was my first intersection, and then put my painter's tape at this intersection, and I just kind of held it out and then snapped it in to make the diagonal line here. Now, when you're putting in your tape patterns, you want to make sure that you're taping so that you have even diagonal or even chevron lines. So when we're looking at this, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. This is going to be white. So you can see that on my pattern. This is what I want to paint. So when I am putting on my tape, I want to make sure when I'm taping, I am taping to the inside of the gray so that I am painting in my entire white chevron. So when I saw that this was, again, my corner to my corner, I wanted to make sure that I put my tape on the gray side of that corner. So I didn't want to put, like, I don't want to put this part of the tape up here and having that as my line, because then my white wall, my white portion would be much smaller than my gray portion. So it's the same thing when I did the next one. So again, this was my measurement going up. This is going to be my, this is only about 15 1/3 inches. And so this was my next crosshair, or my cross point here. And then my grid went up, and this was my next cross point right here. You can see the remnants of some of my line right here. So again, this is what I wanted white. So I wanted to make sure when I put my tape on that I made sure that the tape, the biggest portion of the tape was actually inside my gray wall. So again, that means that this white will be the same amount as this gray line here in terms of how wide the chevron pattern is. So I hope that makes sense. You can always, look that up a little bit more. But so the whole idea is that if this is my crosshair, I don't want to start with this piece of tape underneath of it. I want to start so that this whole piece of blue tape is inside what I want to keep gray. So did the crosshair to the crosshair. And I just followed my exact same pattern here on my wall. I had all of them marked. So I just, everywhere I had a crosshair, I just marked the corners and I matched them up. Inside the white portion, I made sure that I actually clipped or cut the points. So I overlapped my tape to make sure that there was a really good seal. And then I just pulled it up off the wall a little bit and cut that corner. So you can see that the areas where it's going to stay gray, I just kind of crossed them over and then didn't cut because I'm not going to paint inside of here. I'm keeping this gray. But in the areas where I'm painting white, I made sure to then cross them over and then cut. So it actually creates the point of the white portion. The other thing that I did do, and you are seeing it when you're looking at my wall, is I did make sure to mark which areas are going to stay gray. So you see all these little blue tapes. These were just my leftovers from when I was clipping those diagonals from the chevron, those corners. And I just made sure to remind myself which ones I am not painting. These ones are staying gray. The other thing that you notice is that I do have a lot of gray paint already painted on these areas. And like I said, this is the area that I'm going to paint white. And the reason for that is that I'm trying to seal in the blue tape. So what I did was I painted the color that I'm keeping, or the one that I already had, so that when I put the white over this, the gray kind of is already sealed. And it should reduce the amount of touch-ups that I have to make in terms of bleeding underneath of the blue tape. So it's just a little extra step. I just used a small little paintbrush to just kind of go along the corners. I also did paint over my lines, my vertical lines in the gray areas. Figured I might as well do that now while I was already using my gray paint. So I just painted over my pencil marks in all of the gray spots so I don't have to do it later on. So you can see as I kind of zoom out here, that I have my chevron ready to go, and it is exactly like my template. I have my 1, 2, 3 white lines, and then I have my 1, 2, 3 peaks. So it's literally a replica of my template. And once I actually have these painted, I will show you guys what it looks like. I also did tape the sides of the wall so that I don't have to worry about any touch-ups on the corners as well. So, okay, so now I have painted all of the white stripes in my chevron, and you can see I have taken off the tape off of this top one just to show you. I did do 2 coats. 2 coats seemed to be enough for me. And then you can kind of see on these ones, I wanted to show you some that didn't take the tape off yet. So I overlapped the blue tape. I made sure not to go completely over it in most spots, but made sure to overlap the blue tape. And you can see that as you take it off, now the chevrons are going to be the same size. Once I pull off this one right here, you'll notice that the chevrons are actually going to be the exact same thickness on all of these. So I'm just going to continue to take this off, and I will get to show you guys the end results. Okay, so now you can see I've taken off all the tape now, and you can see now that every single one of my chevrons are the same width. So like I said, when we were up close here, I'm just gonna go up here. When I taped, I made sure that the blue tape started here and came down. And then here, I made sure that the blue tape started here and went up so that each one would be an even width here. This is the final result. I still have some pencil marks. You can kind of see them within the gray here, right there, that I do need to get off, but I won't do that. I'm gonna try to get some of it off with a eraser, and then I will actually be going back in and painting. I have a few spots that actually came up. You can actually see right in this corner a little bit. If you look at actually some of the paint pulled up. So I'm gonna have to do a few touch-ups, but that really helped by doing the gray paint as kind of like a base over top of that blue tape. Before I did the white chevron, these lines are so crisp. There are very, very minor areas that do need some help. Otherwise, this turned out beautiful.